welcome to the definitely on time Outcast Intellectual Podcast. But it was actually on time for us because I forgot that I double booked for 10:30, which would have been horrible to like cut this short. So this is the amazing and yet discerning, yet glorious, yet many other adjectives that I would continue using, which are all complimentary but would take too long. Rebecca.
Thank you.
Yes, very much. And it's kind of funny because like I knew that I wanted to have like guests on the podcast because it's like, I don't want to, despite what some people think, I don't just like to hear myself talk. I like to have actual conversations. So I guess it's just kind of fitting then that like you'd be the first person who like I would be asking for it because we kind of already had this talk in impromptu in Tampa.
Yes.
And yeah, it's for anybody who has not heard Rebecca and me talk at the same time before, we kind of talk the same way, which is, oh, this reminds me. Oh, that reminds me. Oh, this reminds me.
Actually, that thing. And when that happened, and
pretty much, which is really unfortunate in the sense of like the time when we get to talk in person, there's always something else for one of us to do. You know what I mean? So it's like we usually don't get the opportunity to. So I'm glad that we got the chance to talk about that in Tampa, even though I almost missed my flight. But it's,
I know the time just kept going. Like we just kept getting an extra hour, and then you're like, oh no, I'm late.
Yeah. It's like, is it an extra hour or is it an hour that you, So it's, but yeah. So today is about just, as I call it, the convoluted nature of relationships in the modern day, and it's like, where do you even start with something like this? You know what I mean? Because there's just so much to address with it. And it's like, there isn't probably going to be like a linear aspect to it. It's just going to be, oh, like, here's this thing. But I mean, I think one aspect to it that I've noticed is that a lot of people just assume that like you're going to get in a relationship. It's like, oh, like, like, so they're like talking to anybody. It's like, there's just always that assumption that it is a desire. And
yeah,
I don't.
If you're not in a relationship, it's because you're in between relationships.
Right. Just like you're on the railroad on the way to the next station.
Yeah.
And it's interesting for me because like I'm a very existential person when it comes to my values, which means that this is absolutely what is true for me, but that doesn't mean that it needs to be true for you. And I think a lot of people still have like that universal model where they think, oh, because this person is like this and they are happy or whatever it is, that means that it's almost like an attack on me for wanting to be, it's like subconscious stuff.
Yeah, it's like if I say, oh, I don't want kids, it's like there's got to be a reason. Or it's like, well, what's the problem with kids? What's the issue there? Well, there isn't one. It's, well, yeah.
My stance on babies is
and they think it's an attack, and it's not. It's like, it's weird because people feel challenged by someone who does things or believes a different way. All of a sudden it's like, well, what's wrong with the way I'm doing things?
Right. Yeah. It's like the absence of validation is itself a critique for the people. And it kind of reveals that like the person wasn't actually talking to you to talk with you. They just wanted something from it because they got upset because they didn't get it.
Yeah.
If they didn't have the expectation, they couldn't be upset by the expectation not being met.
They wanted a validation for someone to be like, oh yeah, that's great. Either I wish I had what you had, good for you, or any of that. But when that's not what they get, all of a sudden they're like, oh.
Yep. And I think it's funny how even that comes into the relationship aspect, because the funny thing to me about most relationships is that people, they glorify and everything, they do the Facebook pictures, they say it's like, oh, I love this person forever, whatever, 6 months later they hate each other, but whatever. It's like, but that's the thing, is that it is very much like a me focused kind of situation, which is a big part of what always turned me off to it, because it's like, there are different aspects to it, but if you only exist as a way for me to be showered in affection and desire and whatever else, then I don't really care about you. You're like a nanny in that case. You know what I mean? Like, and somebody's just being a baby.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
they want to be taken care of. They want to be made to feel good. It's like, they need that other person to, and not everybody, but for
Right.
a lot, I think it's like they just need that other person to feel happy. If only I had this relationship, if only they were there, if only this. And I get companionship, and people don't, like you and me, really like to be alone. But
Yeah.
and a lot don't, and I get that too. But I don't think that like you have to have somebody to be happy. And I think a lot of people, just because of the way our society is structured and what we've been taught, thinks that that's part of life.
Mhm.
You have a partner and your life's going to be better. And I don't think that that has to be the case at all.
Right. It should come from a place where two complete individuals enhance each other's lives and mutually value the other person, from my perspective, versus I'm not a complete person if I don't have you. And like without you, like I don't know what to do with my life. And like that stuff sounds romantic in a movie. It's like, it's awesome when it's, Leo and Kate Winslet at, in Titanic.
Right.
But I still love that movie myself. But
That's one of my favorites.
yeah, it's just kind of funny too.
There was room on the door.
That's something I should probably like add in there. It's like, so that I don't forget, is that like it is not because we're cynical that we came to this conclusion. At least, like, I don't think that's the case, but almost because, and I think we talked about it before, we're almost like we're our whatever hopeless romantics in that regard. And it's because of the nature of most people that where it's like, okay, well, there's kind of like there's the period where you think it's going to happen. And then there's the period where you emotionally realize it's not going to happen, but you're pissed about it. And then there's the period where you're like, okay, well, it's not happening. And I'm just not going to put myself through that in that regard. And it like, maybe it's possible, great. But it's like statistically, like it's possible to win the lottery. It's possible to get a jackpot at the casino.
Yeah.
The reason both exist is because statistically it doesn't happen very frequently,
Yes.
And I think, again, it comes back to the nature of what a person's attitude is towards their romance. Because if it is the value, the mutual valuing aspect, then it's very different from what most people are coming at it from. And because of that, you necessarily are going to be misaligned with whoever that is. Because if you want to be the person who they can rely on and such, but you also do want to be able to count on them, but they just want to count on you. Okay, it's like, great, awesome,
Yeah.
thanks.
Which I think happens a lot. And I think that even say like, here's couple A, girl, whoever, and this one's like, well, I don't feel like my needs are met. Then this one can feel the same way, but it's because they're not whole people in themselves. Like, I really think that people need to be whole and know who they are to add value to somebody else's life. Because if you don't, if you have a lot of issues that you either are unaware of or just choose to ignore, that's gonna kind of destroy things, whether you want to acknowledge it or not. Because now you're ignoring things that could be hurting somebody else, and you're also filling that void with that person, which isn't fair to that other person because they're just trying to be happy. And you should both add to each other's lives and not take and expect the other person to make you feel whole. And I think that's where a lot of people get stuck, and the resentment comes in and the fighting starts. You weren't supposed to do this. You were supposed to do this. I feel unimportant. Why though?
Right.
Like, I don't know how people, there's like a struggle of letting someone be their own person in a relationship.
Yeah, and the aspect of that neediness is that it isn't even just it's like, okay, well, let me live my life. Like if I don't feel complete without somebody else, then that's me. Then just because you're not that way doesn't mean that it's not, that it isn't just as valid. Okay, it's fine, but the problem is that if you come at anything from a needy attitude, you immediately are changing the nature of whatever it is. If you're going after clients, I know a lot of people that we mutually know are marketers, but I also want to keep it in like mind that like not everybody who's watching this is, but it's like whether it's clients, a job, whatever, like anybody can relate to going into that interview and just feeling desperate as hell because you do need the money. And just like where you are emotionally and how you can come at that interview is drastically different than if you're just like, yeah, well, I have like 7 lined up, like whatever, like what's the situation, you know, what's the pay, and so on.
Yeah.
Same thing with relationships, where it's like if you, like, I've known people who they just literally have never gone, since I've met them when we were teenagers, never gone more than like 6 months without some sort of relationship. And I don't, again, like, it's fine to be in a relationship, but why? Because when you are needy, you're, the person doesn't even really exist. If you think about it, they're more like a silhouette
Yeah.
to, like, you know, to shine on you basically and make you feel wanted and so on. And it's like the communication aspect is going to be bad as well, because since you aren't valuing them, you're only valuing the things that they do that hit this, you know, this point, that point, that point. And again, because you're needy, you're not thinking about them. You might think you're thinking about them, but then, like, if they do something and what you do doesn't instantly solve it, since needy people generally have low self-esteem, it's like now you feel horrible and now everything's horrible. It's like, well, okay, but like 3 hours ago you loved this person and you were gonna marry them. You know what I mean? Like all this other stuff.
Yeah.
And so, like, the needy aspect still doesn't work, even if you're just talking about like, okay, I have my life values, you have yours, because you still need to be able to come at it from a mutual value perspective, because otherwise it's like, it's just gonna, you know, there's a ticking time bomb.
And just the energy of neediness right there to me is like, you've already caused a problem. If you are coming at it from desperation, that's
Yeah.
not going to work out. And a lot of the times the other person, like, they may pick up on that and be like, okay. And they're going to start to kind of push away and be like, oh, I need space. And that other person's going to be like, nah, no, you're not going anywhere. And it just like, it just creates this like push pull, and then it's, you hate me. And then it's like, it's just, it becomes a psychological, emotional disaster, because it's just unhealed people forcing their not forcing their unhealedness, but like expecting somebody else to fix their problems basically. And when they can't, it's their fault, because those people can't, oh, well, what can I do to make myself better? What can I do to help that person? It's a very one-sided thing. And I think that destroys like a lot of relationships, and more unhealed people than healed people are in them. So all these issues come up as like common, where it's like, oh yeah, that happens in my relationship all the time, that's normal. No, just because it's
normal
common,
that it's okay.
yeah, common doesn't mean normal or acceptable, right? So I don't know, just the way people approach relationships now is a thing you have to have is just strange to me. Because like, and I've been in relationships like almost always, you know what I mean? And it's like,
Okay.
I've been in so many of them, and I've been that needy person, and like, you know, I get a certain way, and like, but then I learn about myself, and I have the ability to self-reflect and be like, okay, this is what's happening. These were motivations behind it. This is where I was going wrong. And it's like, but I don't know that so many people are able to take those steps back and analyze themselves that way, or be that honest with themselves. You know what I mean? So then they mask it and they hide it, and the problems continue.
Yeah, and it's, I can almost feel like the only way that we're going to like address everything that's going to occur to us is either to do like a 2-hour version of this or like a part 2, because I can feel like just the different paths of conversation opening up. And it's like, because the thing is like, so just to mention a few of the things that occurred to me, it's like, okay, so there's like the nature of being needy versus being with another needy person, where you just create this cycle of codependence where you just, and I don't like using like psychological terms too much because me and popular psychology don't usually agree. And I have some friends like Chrislyn, who's literally been a psychologist. I think she probably still is, like a licensed psychologist, but like, even it was nice to know that she kind of felt similar to me in certain ways, because it's like, I do think the popular psychology just does ruin certain aspects of it. But even I do agree that like when you have 2 needy people and they're in a relationship together, they just, it's like that bucket of crabs where like none of them let each other out, because it's like 2 addicts. It really is 2 addicts if you think about it.
Yeah.
And it's like you go from a situation where someone might push them away, like what you talked about, to where they push each other away, but their neediness brings them back together. And it's just like this over and over again. They just keep smashing their heads together. Or you have the other extreme where it's like, okay, but what about the nature of romance then? Because I think that somewhere where a lot of people go wrong is, okay, they had that realization that like we've had where it's like, okay, well, a lot of this stuff is really, it's not love, it's just personal stuff that hasn't been resolved. But then they stay there forever and they start looking down on people who are in relationships, and they come up with all these reasons why, like, like all the guys suck, all the girls suck, whatever it is, because it's like for them, they realize that they had that issue, but they're not willing to address the fact that they do still need it.
Yeah.
But they're constantly creating that cycle in themselves where they're justifying not being with other people, but because they're just lying to themselves and they do still need it, they keep going towards it. And even in that way, they shoot themselves down because their need drives them into the relationship, but their mentality and attitude, whenever they get to a point where it's uncomfortable, pulls them out of it. And so they create their own like codependent self cycle. So there's just so many aspects to it,
Yeah, it's like they're in this own little world where these fights are normal, or they don't mean as much, or it's just like, oh, that's just, how we talk, or that's just how it is. And it's like, it doesn't have to be that way though.
Yeah.
And it could be so much better, like I was just, the whole romantic side of me is just very, I think it can be near perfect if
Right.
people go in knowing who they are and what they want. Or
Right.
else you create this world where these kinds of fights, those kinds of fights, I'm putting up with this, I'm putting up with that because it's better than being alone. And it's like, so you'd rather be hurt and in this back and forth nightmare because you don't want to be alone? Is being alone really that much worse than having to deal with this every day and like question yourself and question them? Like, to me, that just sounds more exhausting. Like, being single, I'm like the happiest I've ever been.
Right.
And I've learned a lot about myself too in a relationship, what I've expected from other people, what they've expected from me. And, I've got to a point where I'm like, I just want to be me. I don't want to, for lack of better words, worry about somebody else and their issues. Like, I care about everybody, and anyone has any problems, like, come talk to me. I will talk to you all day. You know what I mean? Like, I'm
Right.
all about that. But when it comes to my day-to-day life, oh, I want to go do this, I want to go do that. Oh, well, I wanted to do this instead, or, oh, I'm not really comfortable with that. And I'm like, who are you at this point? And
Right.
because I feel this way, I'm not going to get into a relationship because, maybe you should be considering the other person. And I just not in a place where I want to do that. Right. But I think that there's something important in that, and me realizing that I'm not just going to go find somebody because every now and again I get lonely and I don't want to be. So now I'm going to enter a relationship just to avoid those moments, when in reality, I'd rather just go through those moments and be happy and free, doing what I want when I want
Yeah.
on my own time without all the complications of it. Right. Maybe it'll change as I get older, maybe not.
Yeah. And I think a big aspect of that comes back to, again, being comfortable with just being you.
Yeah.
Because so many people aren't. Like one thing that I always do when it comes to like people, like, because yeah, I am naturally pretty judgmental, and I don't honestly really have a problem with that. And beyond like if it creates problems for me, which like in a certain sense, like it just the attitude of it, I don't want to get too like energy heavy on stuff, because it's like, well, first of all, I don't understand everything, and it's like, second of all, that's not the point of this. I want to at least reel myself in. But when it comes to like just my perception of other people, one thing I always like to do is like, if the person seems anxious, if I stop talking, can they have quiet?
Right.
Can they stand it? And it's like the funny thing is like, you and I love talking, but I also love quiet. And I think you do too. So it's like, it's funny because people saying it's like, oh, like they don't know how to shut up. But it's like, no, like we would also be completely capable of, okay, like you have this thing you need to work on, I have this thing that I need to work on, there's a couch, and we can both sit on the couch and work on our stuff and not feel anxiously compelled to do something. And a lot of people just cannot do that because they are not just comfortable being just them in that moment. And that is where that neediness comes from. So it's like, I can understand where that attitude comes from, where it's like, oh, I can't be alone because their entire world revolves around them being incomplete, you know?
Yeah. And being alone, some of these people are, well, now they're left with their own thoughts. And
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people can't take
Scariest place to
that.
be for them.
Yeah, it's like, oh, well, now I'm thinking about this, now I'm thinking about that, now I'm getting depressed. Now, okay, well, where are my friends? I need to do something. Oh, my friends aren't there for me. Why? And it's like this whole spirally thing just because they can't sit and be alone with their thoughts, because they use people and conversations to, you know, bury. It's almost like drinking to hide your problems. People have these conversations and they'll just use people instead. Oh, I'm
Yeah.
super social, or oh, I always have to be around this and that. I'm super extroverted. And maybe you are, cool. That's obviously a thing, but like, are you just avoiding your own shit at the
Yeah,
same time?
self-medicating.
Because I love being alone, you know what I mean? And I've learned a lot about myself in being alone, and I'll write and I'll write and I'll write and my thoughts and, well, why do I think this? Why do I feel that? All these things that help me know me. So when it comes to having maybe a one-on-one relationship, I know what I like. I know what I don't like. I know what I'm going to put up with. I know that, I might not react well if you're going to do that, but if that's something that who you are, then we're not a good fit, no matter how much I might like you. And I
Right.
think taking that personal responsibility is a huge thing that a lot of people don't do either. Like guys
Personal
like
responsibility.
girls,
What's that?
right? Like guys will like see these girls and they're dressed all a certain way, whatever. And it's like, oh, she's hot. I love that. She's so sexy. And then, well, now they're dating for a while and she's dressing like that. And it's like, well, why are you dressing like that? Who are you
Right.
trying to attract? And all of a sudden it's a problem. And it's like, you liked that when you met them, but now it's an issue. Why? Because you have an insecurity, you feel threatened, there's something else going on there, or you're just possessive and controlling.
Yeah. And I think that, and that is another big aspect of why I think it's people as a whole are having such a hard time resolving this, is because what it often ends up coming down to is the sex war, where it's like all the guys are saying how shitty the girls are, all the girls are saying how shitty the guys are. And it's like, oh, there are no like good people out there. It's like, no, there are good people out there. It's just, you know, you don't understand that like maybe you're one of the shitty people and it's like you're not worth it. And but that's the thing, like it's not politically correct to just point that out. It's perfectly politically correct to say it's like, oh, it's just not what I needed and I need to love myself and all this other stuff. There's so many excuses to give up.
Yeah.
But there are no there are no well excuses or whatever. There are no explanations for why to work on yourself. It makes me think of the Copy Accelerator live event that we were at in Scottsdale when they were breaking down those dating offers. Granted, I know that you are doing a lot more than I am during those times, so I don't know if you were like, I don't even know if you were in the room, like, or if you were like taking care of stuff backstage or whatever. But
Right.
they were saying that all the dating offers, doesn't matter if it's, you know, female, male, sex, dating, relationship, whatever, all of it involved controlling the other person, never working on yourself,
Right.
because that's where that desperate element comes from. And so it's like, you know, when you get down to the aspect of autonomy, and like you mentioned, like being aware of yourself, even knowing what you value, what matters to you, it's weird to me, at least, maybe not to you, but like it's weird to me to not know what that is, because I've always known what I wanted, which is part of the reason, like when things like get screwed up, it's like, well, what I want hasn't changed. And I think that's why I generally bounce back from things, because it's I didn't get what I wanted, but what I want is still the same, so I'm still going to move towards it, you know. And when it comes to people not knowing what they want, and then they don't even know how to course correct to get what they want. So you could be a selfish person but not know how to get what you want, and you just end up screwing yourself over. And it's like when things come to relationships, um, like people try to say, oh, like, well, this group has it easier, that group has it easier, whatever. But it's like, okay, like they're like the typical like thing, for example, from guys is like, well, it's easy to get in a relationship when you're a girl because like there's always people coming at you. So it's like you come from the other end where it's like, okay, but if you're always being desired that and you don't have the time to think for yourself, like, and what you're valued for has nothing to do with you usually in that case, okay, well then like you get lost in it, I can imagine. You spin that around again where it's like, okay, um, with guys, usually what is valued is what exclusively what the guy has to give in a different context. So in both cases, the person isn't being valued for the person, they're being valued for what instinctually the other side is programmed to be interested in, which for guys is the sex and for girls is usually something unrelated specifically just to the sex, but still is not about the guy, like
Yeah.
resources and stuff. And of course, these
Job,
are
money.
generalizations. Yeah, I mean, they're generalizations. You know, sometimes there are gold digging guys and there are sex obsessed girls. Like it's, you know, it's,
Absolutely.
but it does come back to the thing where it's like, and people are so focused on bashing this other side that people often don't have the conversations that could actually solve it for everybody, which
Yeah.
might just be that, you know, we're not going to date. It could, I mean, it could be that like people act like it has to be, oh, how do we make this happen? It's like, well, maybe the way of making it happen is to not need to make it happen.
Yeah. Like being able to say, no, this isn't working, you know, that doesn't happen. But being on the side of, so you said you always knew what you wanted. Well, I was always people pleaser.
Hmm.
Oh, I want them to like me. I want them to like me. How can I help? How can I help? Need this, do blah, 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 blah. So doing that for so long, I didn't even know what I liked or what was important to me or what I valued, because it was like, I'm basing that off of what other people want. So it's like, when someone's like, but what do you want? I'm like, I don't know. I've never thought about what I want. I'm too busy giving everybody else what they want. So then it was like, it ends up being this like, and I'm sure this is a lot true for probably a lot of girls and guys. You just end up not knowing who you are because you think you do. But at the end of the day, when you get deep into it, not so much, because it's just, I want to be what that person wants. So I'm going to kind of chameleon and change. Oh, I'm going to be into fitness guys. I'm going to be into band guys. And like, I've done all of that. But at the end of the day, I also love music and I ended up loving fitness. So these things became a part of me, but it's been taking some time to really figure out me, who I am, and how can I make somebody else happy if I don't even know what I want, you know? And you know, I think that could play a big part in people's relationships too, now that I'm thinking about that.
It is interesting that like what you were looking for wasn't so much the band guy or fitness guy element, but it was those things that you loved.
Yeah.
And in that way, I think a lot of people are trying to fill the holes in themselves with the thing that they already love, but because they're not prepared to just pursue it themselves, or not prepared to make that connection themselves, they use another person as a proxy. And so it's like, you know, it's almost like because you love music, okay, band guy. But it's like, in that case, it wasn't so much about the guy, is that it was a person who, in your case, because you're attracted to guys, was a guy that was connected to what you really love, which is music. So it's
Right.
like, you know,
Which
so
made them attractive, which made them appealing. So it's like, I love that too. And you're all about that life. Awesome. Okay, well, you know what comes with that though?
people.
Listen to this, listen to that. How does this one sound? What about now? This guitar, this riff, listen to this part over and over and over. Did you hear that change? And then it's the show. So then it's all the people and this and that, and then it's exhausting in the practices. So it's like, okay, I love music and they love music, but okay, there's a whole lifestyle that goes on with that maybe I, you know, not aware of, right? And I think that when people, you know, pick a gym guy or they pick a certain person based on an interest or quality, they're picking an interest in a quality. They're not choosing a person. So then they come together and it's like, there's a human attached to this with their own thoughts and desires and feelings. It's like, oh.
Yeah. And even when you like, even if you are a person who means well and you get into the relationship and you realize like, oh, this is why I got into this and I do like this person, but it's not in that way. And so like you end up being in the situation where like now you want to be better than you were by like caring about them, but you also know that like you don't have that investment anymore. And so it's like, okay, but maybe they still have that investment in you. And so like you're torn because like, you want to do the right thing for both people, except that's not the same thing, you know? And it's not even their fault, but it's like, is it really your fault if you weren't aware of it? And now that you're aware of it, Like it's not as just as simple as saying sorry, because like there are consequences to that. And now you're aware of that, but it doesn't change the reality that just saying sorry does not just end it as if you just like looked another way.
Right. So it's a spider web of issues and within the individuals themselves, within the relationships themselves. And I mean, who's really taught about these things? So we're
Yeah.
kind of all just going around winging it,
Who's there to
blaming each
teach it?
other for our hurt feelings and not knowing what else to do with it. Right. So it's like, and I don't know how much that's changed in relationships over time either, because people used to get together for different reasons,
Yeah.
right? These marriages would last however long, but it was a dual income and or a one income, one mother. This is how it was, and that worked for a long time.
Yeah.
But it
Now,
doesn't now.
now you'll get married one year and you'll be divorced the next, because like there's just, it went from being too strong of an institution to now it doesn't really mean anything to most people, which doesn't mean that it can't have value, but it in many cases does not have value.
Yeah.
And I think part of that does come back to people do not have the emotional maturity to make commitments for the most part. And it's like, the funny thing is that I do think that this is like more of a stereotype, and usually stereotypes exist because there is a trend.
Yes.
But like when it comes to like a lot of guys, there's that aspect of like, the guys don't want the commitment, they just want to, screw or whatever. Of course, then there's the other end where it's like, say that like a girl had a kid with someone that, the relationship didn't last. And now she, again, like you have people seeking relationships for their own reasons. She likes the guy, but she also likes that it's someone to share the responsibility with the kid with. And with if the guy is not interested in that, oh, now he doesn't like commitments, is like, that's not the same, because in this case it's that the person was judging the second person because they didn't give them what they wanted.
Yeah.
So it's like and I mean, maybe the guy, maybe they were dating, and then she mentioned like the kid thing, and then he's like, oh, he doesn't want the commitment. Things can exist in exclusivity of each other. So it's not to say like one or the other, but it's like, again, it comes back to the situation where the two sides, which is stupid that it should even be viewed that way, end up just like firing cannons back and forth. And it's like, okay, but you do know that like you still want to marry somebody on that side, and like Romeo and Juliet didn't end well too. So it's like, how are we supposed to make this work for everybody when everybody's just trying to say, oh no, you suck, no, you suck, well, you suck more, no, you suck more. It's like, okay,
everybody sucks.
Yeah.
Stop fighting and just find somebody that you fucking get along with. Like it should be, I don't want to say like go date one of your friends, but it should be a friendship and a romantic thing, not just he's my boyfriend, he's my husband. No, it should be your partner, your best friend. Yeah, like someone that you would do anything for. Like they need to be important to you, not just what they bring to your life. Like you want to give them the best life. You want them to be happy. It's like, let's create something beautiful instead of, okay, what are the benefits here? Like,
because the novelty is going to wear off sooner or later.
And I think that should be allowed to happen. I think people are like, oh, we had this thing for a while. It's like, oh, well, now do we get in a committed relationship or do I stop talking to her? And it's like, well, why don't you just call it at the end of the day? It fizzled out after a couple of weeks. Okay, bye. But like people are too, I don't know, are they scared to hurt somebody else? Like, they're going to seem like the bad person. You were going to say I was just using you if you leave after 2 weeks.
Right.
You think you should be okay with something that's short?
I think part of it comes back to just the fact that, again, I say again, like I've already talked about it, but like we are animals. And the thing is that we are the exception, not the rule, when it comes to relationships in regards to the reality of civilization. Mm-hmm. It is not natural for us to live as long as we do for the brains that we have. And so it's like, you don't need to worry about somebody cheating when the only potential consideration is 50 miles that way and there's a pack of wolves between you and them, because as far as you're concerned, they don't exist. And that is the reality, like when you think of it from the natural aspect. And that's why we have such a hard time like resisting temptation, because our brains are largely the same as they were when our biggest problem was like, what's a good cave to move into?
Yeah.
You know, can I kill that thing before it kills me? You know, it's like, and so you have a situation where a lot of people are working at the animal level in terms of their self-awareness, but civilization has different expectations and demands. And so, like, for example, if someone is hot and another person is powerful and they have a kid, that means that they're likely to have a powerful, hot kid, which
Right.
means that their bloodline will continue. And that's it. And it doesn't matter because, you know, mom and dad are now in their 50s, which in, you know, nature is like 90 years old and they already got killed. So you
Yeah.
don't need to worry about a 40-year relationship or an extended relationship because it's never a problem. And there's no morality, there's just animals. So it's like, you know, it's another facet to it that complicates things.
Well, yeah, and with us living as long as we are, we change as people. Like, I'm not the same person I was 10 years ago. I'm not the same person I was 5 years ago.
Right.
So how can you expect two people who are constantly changing and learning about themselves and evolving in their own right to necessarily stay together forever? Like,
Yeah.
you change, you're different. Maybe you want different things, like different things, and like that's okay. I think, oh, but if we break up, oh, we have history, or oh, but it was such a, who the fuck cares, man? Like, keep moving forward. You can still be friends. You can still, if everything's good, you know what I mean? Like, I just think life's meant to be lived to its fullest. And if you're restricting yourself because of a very small part of your life, a relationship, like, you're really doing yourself a disservice. You're missing out. Like, and don't get me wrong, some people, like, they find each other, they love each other, and they are just together forever. And I think that's like amazing. I think that's something very special. And I don't think that's common.
Right.
But, you know, I love it when I see it. I can see someone who's truly, genuinely happy, who should be together. And I'm like, oh, I love it. Right. But I don't think that everyone should expect to have that. I think they should be lucky if they have that, but not expect it and force it and try to make it happen, you know?
Yeah. I mean, it comes back to, I think, and again, this is why there's this we would either have to talk until one of us passes out or we need to have an episode too, because like there are things that like we bring up like while we're talking that like could take another 20 minutes in of themselves. And like I think we're doing a good job of keeping like a steady conversation, but like we also know that they're like that the branches are getting clipped so that we can keep the tree growing, you know what I mean, so to speak. And even just the nature of like say the one person doesn't grow and the other person does. Maybe they were perfect fits, you know what I mean? And it's like that happens.
It's heartbreaking. I hate that.
It sucks because it's like they were a perfect fit and it's now, but like, you know, for whatever reason, why are you different? Why are you different? Why are you different? Why are you going? You know, it's like it sucks, but it's like it's also what happens, you know, like when
it's a
somebody
brutal
will know
reality, you know, like, and I think a lot of people are like, they're kind of addicted to lust, you know, like the beginning, and they like and I love all of that. Like, I love the beginning. I love the meeting. Do I want to draw it out for 3 years? No, not necessarily.
No, I mean, there's a chemical in your brain to make you love it. You know what I mean? And it's like, that creates that sense. So it's not even your fault that you love it, you know, like it's there to make you do it. It's like if you were like a ball on a slide that is greased, it is like, okay, well, you're going to go down the slide, like physics, this is how it works. But then it's like, oh, but physics also doesn't care that eventually you need to hit the bottom and you have all the momentum. So it's like, you know, so that's the reality in real life where like even Lana mentioned the double issue is at first, there are a lot of people pleasers and even more people who hate to say or hear no, which comes back to like the emotional maturity aspect where the people like they don't have a complete awareness of themselves, let alone a feeling complete themselves to commit to something. And that comes back to like, if you think about it logically, rationally, whatever, if I don't have any value on my own, then I have no value to bring to you.
Exactly.
And so people define themselves by the relationship, and it's like, okay, well, you can't, like 1 + 1 can't equal 2 if 1 and 1 only equal 1 when the 2 is there.
Yes.
It's not, you know?
Yes. I love that.
And it's funny to me because like I always like I've said that I always know what I want. What I want doesn't necessarily mean that who I want to have it with is going to actually happen. And that's another thing. It's
Exactly.
like sometimes you know what you want, but then as soon as somebody seems like they might be viable for it, they become the catalyst again for what you want to happen. And so, like, for example, all the relationships I've ever been in, it's funny because, like, again, first of all, I'm very different from a lot of guys. I don't know, like every guy says that, but it's like that is actually the case. And so when I get like the stereotype, I'm like, okay, well, I don't care that you're hot if you're a bitch. I don't, it's like all these different things where like most guys don't care, but it's like, okay, well, like I'm this person. I'm not a guy, I'm me. You know what I mean? Just like you're not a girl, you're you. And people aren't prepared for the individuals. And so like something I noticed was that whenever I would treat like a girlfriend well, or even if she wasn't a girlfriend yet, the only inevitably she would want to make it sexual. And like there is like the actual like just maybe the natural evolution of a romantic relationship. But the thing for me was it was the girl who would make it sexual first in all of my situations. And like not go and take the narcissistic path because I'm just so alluring. It's like
The hair.
like, well, who can blame her? But and it made me think even in that regard is that because a lot of people define their value by how others value them, a lot of people only value those things in exclusivity. So like a lot of girls from like what I've just from the conversations I've had where it's like I would always think, oh, if you're just naturally pretty and it's not just all makeup, then it seems like there would be less pressure. But because that is like the main thing that gets focused on, it's almost like there's more pressure in that regard because yes, there's the skull structure and like the hair, whatever. It's like it seems so natural, but because the obsession from others is on that one point, there's just the pressure simply because it's the only thing people care about. It's not spread across what can I do? Who am I? Like, what do I think? What conversations do I have? It's just, you're hot. And I'm sure that does happen with guys as well, but it's just something that occurred to me with girls. And that's part of why I made the connections. Like maybe the reason why these girls always made it sexual when I treated them well was because it was the only value they thought they had to give.
Yeah. That's all
And
people focus on, right?
even when somebody finally doesn't, once you have all that momentum, it's like, well, it's like there's the ideal, like there's the movie moment. It's like, oh, finally someone sees me for who I am. And then there's the reality where the person's like, wait, like, huh? Because that's how people really get. It's like, wait, like like I'm more than like, oh, this is like, I don't, what am I supposed to do? Because like this usually happens in the moment where the person's like, okay, well, I need to do something. I have no idea what, you know.
I've had that where it was, and it's so sad, but it's like a guy will relay something back that I had said like, a few weeks ago, or they remembered my favorite this, or they're like, oh, you said that this was important. And it's just like, what? Like you're listening to me? And
Yeah,
it's like almost like a really emotional thing because it's like you feel seen as a person and not just for how you look. And for me, like I like to dress a certain way, I like to look a certain way, like I just like it. I'm not looking for anybody. I'm not trying to get people to be like, oh, hey, come talk to me. No, I just fucking like the way I look and I should. I think everybody should
yeah,
and be
same.
comfortable in their skin, right? But because of that, it draws a certain kind of attention. So for me to sift through who actually wants to get to know me, not just because of how I look, is really fucking difficult. Because I've
Yeah,
had people put months and months and months and sometimes years into me, but really for one purpose. So like it's really hard for me just to like assume anyone actually does like me for me unless they're my friends,
right.
because I've seen what the lengths people will go to just for, my company to have me around because I'm, I look a certain way that they like or whatever it is, right? I like you, so I'm gonna stay and do things that are gonna make you stay here. But at the end of the day, I don't actually really care. And they don't, because it's like, I need you all of a sudden, and they're no, not there. So it's
And
like,
that's the thing, like, are you, and then are they even trying to be a friend, or are they just trying to use that as an in? And like,
exactly.
and that's, and the thing again is that like people focus on just their experience most of the time. But like, and that's part of the reason why I think that like our conversation went so well in Tampa and why it's going so well now. Do you have a hard stop at some point, by the way, just so I know like what your timeline
A
is?
minute.
10 minutes? Okay. So yeah, there's definitely gonna have to be a part two, but
Yes.
it's people only define their experience of the situation because it's like, for example, with the whole thing of like never truly knowing, like it always puts you on the back foot in that regard. You know, it's like you're in a fight.
Yeah.
And at the same time, from what is historically the guy's side, like I'm attracted to girls. Rebecca, as far as I know, is mostly just attracted to guys. Like this is a heterosexual like discussion, like too fucking bad if it doesn't apply to you. You know what I mean? Like, you know, like we don't have enough time to talk about the things we wanted to talk about, let alone expand the nature of it. But it's like for me, being someone who is not just like yes, I don't want to be romantically involved with a girl if I'm not attracted to her simply because, well, then just be friends.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But it's like at the same time that wouldn't be my focus because it's like there's only so much variance in what you're gonna see and
Yeah.
experience. And it's like for me, like the novelty of that just wears off. So it's like, okay, but it's like if you've opened one present, you've kind of opened them all, you know what I mean? Like
I
it's not
mean, you're
this,
not wrong.
you
Like,
know,
it's the same shit.
yeah. And it's like that doesn't mean that you're not like there isn't a new thrill each time, but at the end of the day, like I know I hope I know what's gonna be there. So it's, you know what I mean? So like I would want to like actually get to know who a girl was, or even not even be attracted to her and just want to talk. But because I'm the guy, there's that suspicion. So in both cases, the people are isolated because the girl doesn't know and the guy can't show. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And that, you know, and I wasn't just trying to make that like rhyme. That just kind of came out that way. But it's like,
Poet.
art thou, you know? So yeah,
But
and
like, people like you, like, and I don't know if it's
people
just
like
because
me.
people like you, because we vibe well or we just get along. Like, I don't, but like, there's just this, for me, an innate like trust with you. But like, I have, my brothers who are amazing, sweet, kind, generous, selfless people, and then the guy friends that I choose, they're the same way. So it's like, again, like going back to the all guys are a certain way, all girls are a certain way. Fuck no, they're not. And I
Yeah.
know that because of the men I keep in my life. You know what I mean? So it's just like guys like you are the reason that guys get a bad rep. I say that often, but like, there's good people. It's just sorting out. And I think that's everybody's struggle. You don't know. It's always a risk and it's scary. And then your feelings get hurt and you're vulnerable and people react to that different ways. And that's a whole other fucking thing.
Yep. Which is why there's probably going to be a part 3 on in honesty, not just a part 2.
I will do this as often as we want. I love these conversations.
Yeah, we honestly, you know, if it was just us talking about whatever, it'd probably work. But we do have other things that like we'll wait until the audience builds and we're making millions off of every episode.
All of the monies.
All of the monies to probably just buy an animal sanctuary and then just have it like filled with dogs.
Yep. Or just give all the sanctuaries all the money. Here you go. Here you go.
Right.
Yeah,
As long as they're the good ones.
I just want to save the animals.
That's the dogs are love, cats are love, animals are love.
All
They're
of them
life.
I love. Yes.
We're not biased at all.
We don't deserve animals.
I think that a lot of it does come down to just what you mentioned though before about just being aware of things, because even like in your case, like the guys that you know that give you actual personality context for guys is why you can understand that not every guy that's talking to you is focused in one direction, you know. It's just kind of funny when you think like One Direction, you know, like the pop band that like, you know, like
Stop that.
Yeah, it's just funny to me. So I think that like I guess to like bring what can be brought back, uh, it does come to being aware of yourself, but being aware of not the other, but just other people in general, because at the end of the day, it is still just relationships. A relationship is a relationship. So it's like a romantic relationship is bound to the aspects of a relationship just as much as having a friend who, as soon as like you and the significant other is having a tough spell, they're going to sleep with them behind your back. Like those are still relationships.
Yeah.
And people treat them like they're islands and unto themselves. And aspects of it, is different because it's like, I don't want to screw my friends, you know what I mean? But it's like at the same time, they do still have the same fundamentals, is that it needs to be, I know who I am and I have a reasonable understanding of who you are. And it's the same as, the case. And we just value what is there rather than just seeing
Value the
the use.
person.
Yep. Value the person, not the usage or whatever.
Not the color of paint they're wearing.
Yeah. Yes, I only date people who dress exclusively in body paint. I'm so sorry.
Not enough paint for me.
For a deeper shade of blue. I'm so sorry. Well, I appreciate you giving me an hour of your time, Rebecca, and an hour different from when it was originally planned.
It worked out better for us anyway.
It did. And I'm sure that we will have numerous conversations in the future, which will be just as fulfilling. It's funny because there are so many things that I probably could have talked about at more length. I'm sure same as you. Like, I don't know how many of your bullets we hit, how many bullets of mine we hit, but it's like, but it's just more conversation for the next time. And
yeah, we'll have a monthly relationship talk.
I mean, I wouldn't complain. So
we can ask people what they want to address.
Right. See, I think that'd be really cool. I think I mentioned it to you before as well. Just having like an episode that's just questions. Relationship talk with Rebecca and Isaac, or Rebecca and Lord Hyde. Madam Blondin and Lord Hyde. Give you the perspectives on your peasantry relationships.
I was gonna say bow down peasants, but you stole the word from me.
We'd have to like dress like in a different way though. You need to have like your most like formal gown, and I'd have to walk on screen with a goblet of like wine in my hand.
Oh my God, can we?
I'm writing it down before I forget.
Dress formal AF.
Dress formal AF for relationship biznatch.
I love
it. Hopefully I'll remember it. Hopefully you'll remember it. We'll remember it together.
It's recorded.
Yes. See, here we go. But for those watching, remember, I forget.